Now, welcome back. As we had promised earlier on in the show, today we'll get some analysis on some of the top stories in the country, those that have been hogging the headlines, from the stories of the devastating floods in KwaZulu-Natal to the country's economic woes and unemployment, the rolling blackouts from power utility Eskom, and many others. So let's get into it. We're joined by a political analyst, Gogo Aubrey Matshiqi, to help us navigate some of these stories. Gogo, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Tawazan.
So first off, if we think of the last time we spoke and what was happening in the country, and since then a lot has happened. Post the elections, we've seen more of the same in certain instances. We've seen the devastating floods in KwaZulu-Natal, and of course a lot of discontent, rumblings from the nation over, for example, the 22 million rand monumental flagpole. So just a snapshot of your assessment of where we are as a country right now.
Well, Fatina, I've been worried about three things. I've been worried about the state of the nation. I've been worried about our political economy. And I've been worried about the spiritual state of the nation. Now, you are right that a lot has happened. You can even go back to 2 years ago with the onset of the coronavirus crisis, which has deepened the crisis of inequality and poverty, literally in this country. Food insecurity has worsened. You have more than 50% of South Africans who do not know what they are going to eat today. You talk about the saga of the flag. What you did not mention, but I think may be on your mind also, is what happened in Rustenburg on Workers' Day, when the president seemed to be laughing at the plight of workers who had been on strike at the time for about 8 weeks, demanding a 1,000 rand increase. And for me, South Africa over the past few months, since the beginning of the year, has been the story of deepening underdevelopment, deepening inequality, deepening levels of poverty, deepening unemployment, deepening crisis of food insecurity, coinciding with a political class that seemingly is increasingly becoming detached from the reality and the lot of ordinary people.
But in speaking of the political class, these are, of course, leaders who on a daily basis refer to the South African public and electorate as our people. So when you say that they are out of touch, they may say that they are not, and they are doing the best that they can with what they have. So how further do we explain this being detached from the ordinary people on the ground?
Well, the phrase "our people," if you translate it to African languages, for instance, in Zulu, it would mean "abantu bagithi, bathu barona," meaning you are embedded amongst them, you are embedded in that reality. And therefore, because you are embedded in that reality, you cannot be detached, you are not detached, and therefore, you cannot be desensitized. I've argued for many years to you, Sakina, on this program, that one of the things that happens when a party becomes dominant for too long is that that party delivers two problems. The first problem it delivers is that it becomes desensitized to the interests of so-called ordinary people. And the second thing it delivers is institutional uncertainty. I would say there's a third thing that this country suffers from, which is a microcosm of what is happening at global level. This country suffers from a chronic lack of leadership, even within our political class, even within the state. And what societies do, I have said in the past, is that when faced with declining levels in the quality of leadership, such societies will adjust. And when you see the level of decline in different levels in this country, you realize that in many ways this society, both in the public and private space, has adjusted itself to the poor quality of leadership that is available to it. And one example of this poor quality is right at the top, where right at the top, the one who occupies the union building seems to be laughing, seems to be condescending when it comes to how he engages with the poor plight of South African citizens.
So, looking at the plight of the people and the state of the nation, as you pointed out, and also the state of the political economy in South Africa at the moment, let's zoom in on our state-owned enterprises in the country. The power utility Eskom, it seems as though we are just running in circles, more and more blackouts and seemingly no real end in sight for these rolling blackouts. What's your assessment of what's going on with Eskom and other state-owned entities at the moment?
I know that as you use the term blackout, someone in Eskom in the executive was squirming because they don't like that term, blackout. Well, the first thing that needs to happen, I think we must all accept, is that the chief executive, Mr. Director, must go. Because he does not seem to have a clue about what should be done to remedy the crisis, the energy crisis that the country is facing. Now, of course, if you think of power stations, each power station is an independent state. Now, the executive and the board rely on what they are told by those who run the system. But right at the top, there is no capacity to analyze what they are told and to spot problems if there are gaps in what they are told. But as a country also, we suffer from selectivity. Now, if the chief executive was Matshiqi, I can tell you now, there would have been an outcry, especially in the media, about why he still retained his job. But more importantly, you use the term blackout, and it strikes me that one of the scenarios we are not painting is the possibility of a collapse, complete collapse of the system. I am not ruling out the possibility that one day the crisis becomes so deep that we have a total blackout in the entire country, as a result of which the country is plunged into all manner of mayhem and barbarism.
Well, at least the president is more positive, more upbeat on that score. Last week, he was saying that he does not foresee that particular scenario unfolding. But if we look at what's happening with regard to the general management of our state-owned entities, the unemployment crisis in the country, and if we look at moving forward, because I'm trying to squeeze all of this in the interest of time, the upcoming elective conference of the African National Congress, which will of course be preceded by the policy conference, the sort of issues that need to be discussed there, bearing in mind, of course, that if the ANC is victorious in 24, those will be the policies that govern this nation. So let's just briefly touch on those.
Well, as we saw in the Eastern Cape province ANC conference recently, policy does not matter. These people spend about 4 days fighting over credentials and therefore do not have enough time to discuss policy, as if the plight of our people through policy engineering that can be remedied does not matter. I can tell you now, Sakina, that the policy debate is largely irrelevant in the ANC because the policy debate is a proxy for other things, including preferences for who must become a leader.
So with that said, as we end this conversation, Gogo Aubrey, with regard to the former Health Minister William Kize now seemingly entering the fray, and we lost that connection, unfortunately. We'll have to leave it there, but maybe come back to it on another day, because I think it's very important that we get into these discussions around who will be contesting the elections for the ANC's leadership come December. So all of that will, of course, be preceded by the policy conference that's to take place shortly in a few weeks or months, I would think. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Any second stolen with Aubrey is devastating. But that's what happened.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, leaving it there. But I suppose it makes
on a cliffhanger, as it were.
Exactly. But I suppose it makes it easier to wrap the show in time. That's a reality. Have a great day, everybody. We'll be back with